what together? Go to jail together. What you need to understand, in the 1960s, because of him, it was a badge of honor to be arrested. My question was going to be, how many of you think that if you went to jail, you would assume, if you knew somebody that went to jail, you would assume that they had done something just terrible? That would be your first feeling, right? You wouldn't trust them, right? What Martin Luther King did was, he said, we're fighting against immoral what? Laws. And you know what the authorities are going to do? They're going to arrest you. And you should be proud that they arrest you. That you should wear a badge of courage that you actually went to prison. That you went to jail. Standing up for what's what. Right. And by the way, when he combines all those things, those people are cheering. They get it. Okay. Here's my personal story about that. My sister's daughter, right? When she was in college, and this is not the 1960s. This is in the 80s. Okay? When she's in college, what she does is there was some cause that meant so much to her, and it was about human rights, that they were going to have a march in Washington, D.C. under the White House. They were going to make demands from our government. So, and she was going to school in Michigan, at the University of Michigan. Her and her friends got in a bus, you know, in a nice car, and drove to Washington, D.C. to be in this march. Okay? And the march was, they marched right by the White House making demands, and I wish I could remember what the cause was, but I want to get this up to you. And then the way they do it now, somebody came out with a bullhorn and said, if you'd like to be arrested, please lay down in the street. So, not everybody, but my niece did, along with hundreds of others. And now what they got arrested for was obstructing traffic. Now what they're trying to do, though, see, now here's what the civil rights people are doing. But now the news, though, has to cover, why did you arrest 300 people laying down in the street, and why were they laying down in the street? And they got a spokesman. So then the police come out, and it's great film, you know, the news people like to watch people getting arrested. And there's my niece with her getting cuffs on her back and stuck in a paddy wagon and driven to the Washington, D.C. police station. She calls her mother in Detroit and says, Mom, I've been arrested. I need bail money. Can you send me money to get me out of jail? And she says, why are you in there? She says, well, I was in the march. And then she explained. And guess what my sister said to her?
Good job.
Congratulations.
Stay in there.
Congratulations. And here's the money to get you out. Finally, you're standing up for what's right. Because my sister and I remember the 19 what? Now, the nice thing about this is, my dad was in his 80s, and he called my niece and congratulated her. You think that your niece got in what? Jail. My dad was bragging to his friends. He said, somebody still cares about the world. Somebody just, my daughter, my niece, have done something. Yeah, go ahead.
How much was the bail money?
It was like $100.
Is it a lot back then?
No, $100 is $100, yeah, it's cheap. You see what? Now, I'm going to pick on you some more, man. Why are you worried about the cost? I'm fighting for civil rights, man. I'm trying to change the world. Change the world for $100, charge me every time.
And then if
You
you're
get
in
it?
poverty, then you might not be able to get out. Like, what if you're
Well, then you sit there until, and by the way, a lot of people didn't pay.
But what if you're like the main person in the family who has to work in order to pay to feed your family?
Okay, you got decisions to make.
And
Wait, hold it. You got decisions to make. And you're right. Do I take care of my family, okay, that is not being discriminated against? Or do I risk to help others? And what price am I willing to pay? Am I willing to go to jail? Martin Luther King was willing to pay the ultimate price, his life. And his family. Now go back to the Kohlberg stuff. I said it's hard to be the number 6. Not many people make it to 6. Because now you're doing a whole bunch of calculations. What am I willing to do? Right? And so that's the key. And and you're right. Some people wouldn't lay down because there was too much to lose. You want to hear my greatest teaching moment? Okay. You ready? I was working in Houston. And I swear this is the greatest, this is how I knew my kids were good. I was working in Houston, and Houston gets weather like we do here. It's hot and by the way, it was exactly about this time of year. Houston gets very hot. At the high school I worked at, the air conditioning went on. Okay? And we didn't have nice big windows. We had these little tiny windows like this. You might have 4 of them in your room, but that's all you had. So the first day we come in, we're all sweating. They didn't dismiss school because the air conditioners went out. Okay. So one day that was okay. We got through. Next day, no air conditioning. You got it? So everybody goes to class. We do that. By the way, the teachers are sweating as much as the students. Okay. Third day, still no what? And people are getting irritated. What was really cool, at lunchtime, the student council organized everybody at lunch to have a walkout. And they refused to go back to class in the afternoon. And they went into the parking lot. The school it was a high school of about 700 kids. The whole high school. So the size of our school was condensed into 4 grades. So 700 kids walked into and I'm watching from my window from my room. Now here's so now this is the power of the people. If you all stick together, this is the kind of power you have. So 700 kids go out, and I felt so bad for the assistant principal, and he shouldn't have said this, and I bugged him about it later. I said, "You look like an idiot, but that's okay." He yells out, he says, on the thing, he says, "If you do not go back to class, we are going to suspend you." And they yell back, "Go ahead, because you won't have school because we're the students. And we're all out here." And they were exactly right. You got it? The next thing that happens, I'm watching from my window, these news trucks show up. And the news guys jump out of the truck with their cameras and they're filming, because this is going on in the city of Houston. There's 600 kids in the parking lot, blah, 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 blah. The neat thing was, the student council, finally the principal comes out and he says, "Okay, we got to work something out. Who's in charge out here?" And the 4 elected student council kids said, "You can talk to us. We speak for them." But the news cameras are watching us the whole time. So the principal's trying to get them away from the news people and trying to get his face off the news because he knows this is good for the high school in Houston. So he leads these 4 kids goes to his office. Unfortunately for the principal, because it's not his fault, but unfortunately for the principal, the air conditioning in the admin and administration offices was separate from the one from the rest of the school. So the air conditioning is working in the offices of the principal, the vice principal, and all of the administrators. By the way, there's a news guy trying to get his name made. He follows the kids in, and he says, the principal's name is Mr. Wheeler. They say, "Mr. Wheeler, why is it so cool in here and so hot out there?" And then he kind of stumbled over himself and just did what I just said. He said, "Well, we're on a separate thing, and this one's broken, and blah blah blah." Anyway, long story short is, the kids sit down with the principal and they say, "Look, we'll make a deal with you. If there's no air conditioning tomorrow, we'll all come to school. But if there's no air conditioning, we're not going to class. We're just going to go home because it's not right because it's too hot." By the way, the teachers are secretly, saying, "Thanks, guys. I can't refuse to come in because I might get fired. I wasn't willing to pay the price." The other thing that was going on during this, there were kids in my this is the other thing I forgot. and about paying the price. Why I'm watching the kids go into the what? Parking lot. There were a few kids in my room. And the assistant principal again got on the PA and he says, anybody that's not in class get a 0 for the day. And I looked, but I had some kids in my room that were getting D's and D minuses. If you get a 0 for the day, you fail. So they said, what do I do? I said, I have to give a what? 0. I'm not. I was just told by my boss I can't. See, now I got a problem too. Do I support the kids and get in real trouble with my principal, or do I do what they tell me to do? I said, I'm going to do what they told me. I said, you got a decision to make. Are you willing to fail this class and have to retake it next year, or are you going to go out into the thing? And some kids stayed in the room, and some other kids went out and said, I don't care, I'm going out because I have to be with my friends. Okay. Long story short is, the very next day, immediately they got trucks out there, but the reason why it wasn't the principal's fault. He kept asking the school district to fix the what? The air conditioners. They never came. There was a breakdown in communication. So it was an honest, the people in the building, they understood what was going on. They tried everything they could. Except now it made the nightly news. And I swear it made the nightly news. Okay? The next day, though, we come into school. They had fixed it right after school that day, and the next day, that building was so cold you could have, there were like icicles coming in. Because the principal said, leave the air conditioners on all night, so no kid can not know that the air conditioners are not running. And we were all like, oh, this is pretty good. But anyway. But now I said, now I'm going to brag about myself, I got a day or so goes by, and then my principal calls me into his office. And he says, what are you teaching those kids? I said, what are you talking about? He says, you know those news trucks? I said, yeah. He says, how? And he says, did you have anything to do with those comments? I said, no. I said, and he said, well, one of your kids said they called from the payphone. This is before cell phones, you gotta remember that. Called from the payphone in the main part of the building where we had payphones, you know, for kids to call their parents or whatever they had to do. Called the news people. And then he says, I asked them why they called the news people. And they said, Mr. Isley told us that if we were going to do civil disobedience, first of all, we got to be willing to pay a price. And second of all, we got to let people know. So I decided that the good idea was to call Channel 7 News and tell them that if they got here really fast, that they were going to see 700 kids in a walkout. And it would be good on the nightly news. And Mr. Wheeler, he was kind of ticked. I said, I know you're upset, and I felt bad for you. You look terrible on TV. You know, sweat dripping down, and everything. I said, I really, you know, I felt bad for you, but you just made my day. And then he started laughing. I said, my kids actually listened to the civil rights unit that I did. They actually did what King told them to do. Get the press there. Make sure people know you're not alone. Make it as big as you possibly can. And then I went, and then I couldn't resist. I had to go to see the assistant principal. I said, you know, you can't fire everybody or we don't have a school. I mean, you get that, right? You look like a bonehead saying, you know, you're all suspended, you know, we need students, kind of thing. He says, yeah, I know. He says, I lost my temper and I said a really dumb thing, but we laughed about that for days. But the nice thing is my kids were willing to actually, students that I had said, oh, it was Mr. Isley that told us to do that. That's when the principal wanted to know if I had actually told him to do that while it was happening and I had nothing. He said, no, I'm supporting you 100% because I don't want to be fired. I'm not going to pay that price.